Today, we're going to do some flower drawing, learn some more basic botany, and some more plant families in our nature journals. Even though we're keeping the technical terms to a minimum, there are still three concepts from botany that are going to help us today. The first one is the term inflorescence. So a lot of times flowers are actually combinations of flowers, and we should call those an inflorescence. An example is many of the plants in the sunflower family are actually an inflorescence, even though they look like a single flower. Also, many plants have flowers on stalks such as this, and those should be called an inflorescence. Next, another grouping of plant parts is the corolla. So when you take many separate petals and connect them together, you can call that a corolla. So whether they're fused all into one, such as in this tobacco flower where all the petals are fused together, or when they are actually all separate, you can still call them a corolla. And the other term is calyx. So when you have multiple sepals, so the leaf-like part underneath the petals combined into one, that is a calyx. So an example would be on this comfrey flower right here, you can see that all of these green sepals are fused into a single unit, and that is a calyx. So inflorescence, corolla, and calyx are three terms that we're going to use today. We're going to draw three different flower families in our nature journals. And first, we're going to start with the cotton family, the Malvaceae. This family now has over 4,225 known species, and they've actually combined a couple families into the Malvaceae family that used to be their own families. So this family contains hibiscus, it contains cotton, okra, and now it also combines cacao and even the durian families. So this is a really cool family, and even though we're going to talk mostly about flowers, some of them, of the most well-known Malvaceaes, have these palmate leaves. The flowers are very recognizable with a five petals, and they often have a fused calyx beneath, and the male parts are numerous here, but they're fused into a type of tube that sticks out. So many people know that characteristic hibiscus flower that has those fused male parts with either in the Malvaceae family, it could be 5 to numerous male parts and a single female part. So see how that part sticks above? Let me just pull off these petals here. So you can see this is very characteristic of this family. Look how this tube sticks out there, and you can see all of the dusty pollen there. So let's go ahead and draw this flower family. I'm going for a consistent layout with my pages today to make the comparison of the families more apparent. So I'm starting with the big picture, showing the inflorescence with some of the leaves, some of the unopened flowers, and just getting that overall feel of the entire plant. And as you can see, I've already created my basic layout where I'm going to zoom in on an individual flower. And this one I'm going to show from the front. I discovered something while I was looking at that one. So I wrote down some questions and added some color right away. And in this case, I added the color little by little while I had the individual flowers out, but that actually ended up being hard. And as you can see, I had to use my paper towel to suck up some of the wet on wet. Now I'm showing the flower from different perspectives. Now remember, looking at things from different angles is really useful, especially in botany. So don't just take the default view. Also, cross sections, cutting the flower open and showing it from different angles is really important for showing the different aspects of the flower. I'm adding in more color now that my first wash has dried, and just getting some of the, just some of the aesthetic part of the page organized. The last time I did botany drawings, I didn't do any color, but color is pretty useful for botany. Next, we're going to look at a notorious and super important family, the Solanaceae, the tomato, tobacco, mandrake, Datura, brugmansia family. So many species in this family, including potatoes, including chili peppers. A lot of them have alkaloids, which are plant compounds that often have either a poisonous or psychoactive or medicinal effect on animals. Many of them have trichomes, which are these hairs for protection or reduction of moisture loss. And importantly, looking at the flowers, they have five sepals, five sepals often fuse into a calyx there. The corolla or the petals, there's five of them on this individual, on this Solandrum cicimbrifolium. They're individual petals. You can see five male parts there, very large anthers, male part, and a single female part with a superior ovary. Also in this family is tobacco and brugmansia and datura, all of which have a good example of fused petals. So as you can see, you would not be able to count petals on this flower because they're all fused into one. So this is a good example of a corolla, but you can still see that it has 5 points. And it's not completely, it doesn't have complete radial symmetry. It's slightly asymmetrical, and you can also see that the calyx here is fused as well, but there's 5 sepals fused into that calyx. Then on the inside, you can see there are 5 male parts and a single female part sticking out there. This one will also have a superior ovary and numerous seeds, and the trichomes are very evident on this. My finger is getting sticky. So let's draw this solanaceous flower now. Once again, I'm starting with that basic layout, the big picture of the flower, and laying in some of the composition elements. I'm also making these more schematic, so I'm not too worried about the way that leaves are curling or showing foreshortening. I'm simplifying things to capture the idea. So getting the big picture of the inflorescence with some of the leaves and the spines, and then some of the details about this particular family. I'm also getting another species on this page, in this case the tobacco flower, because it has a really different appearance with the fused corolla compared to the Solanum cicimbrifolium. So on the side, I'm doing something similar to the last plant family where I'm showing the flower and the sepals from different angles, and I think that provides some consistency that's really helpful when you're comparing similar things or comparing multiple plant families, for example. I also did a cross section. I'm using my X-Acto knife to cut open the flowers, and that's been really illuminating. I highly suggest dissecting flowers when you can, because by opening them up, you'll learn a lot more about the structure. Now you'll notice on this page, I'm doing all of the drawing in the text before I get my watercolor, and that ended up being a lot more strategic than on the last page where I was going back and forth. The only problem is that sometimes you've set aside the flower that you drew and you can't match the color exactly, but it's definitely better from a, just a process point of view. So I recommend doing it that way. Last but certainly not least, we're going to look at and learn about and draw the boraginaceae. This family has about 2,000 known species and is named for this plant right here, borage. This plant is used for edible and medicinal purposes, and many of the plants in this family are really good for bees. So they have, as you can see, they have 5 petals fused into a corolla, 5 sepals, 5 male parts formed into a really strange arrangement, and a single female part in the middle. Many of them have trichomes as well. And one characteristic about this family that makes it especially fun is their inflorescence. So remember, an inflorescence is the grouping of flowers. And in this family, they always come in a group. They're not individual flowers. And this particular type of inflorescence is called a scorpioid cyme. As you can see, the inflorescence it has this curl to it, And as they develop and mature, you can see these ones have lost their corollas already and have been pollinated, and they become less and less mature the further you go into this scorpioid cyme. So this scorpioid cyme is characteristic of the family. Many of them are have five petals and 5 sepals, and you can see in the case of this comfrey, the petals are all fused into a tubular corolla. So remember, a corolla is the accumulation of petals, and in this case, just similar to the tobacco, they're all fused into one. Another example of this family, you can't see the scorpioid characteristic quite as much in here, but this is forget-me-not. You can still see the 5-part symmetry, the 5 petals there. You can see the trichomes on the stems and leaves, and if you look carefully, you will see the scorpioid cyme. So those are characteristics of the boraginaceae family. So let's draw this plant now. I've done 2 pages so far, so I kind of have a good idea of what I'm going to do. So that consistent layout's really helping me today, and I'm getting the big picture again, starting with that, the overall layout. Once again, I'm using those Tombow pens, brush pens, sort of for my basic kind of underdrawing. Oops, looks like I'm going to do the watercolor bit by bit this time. I think I wanted to try to match the color more exactly, so started with some of the watercolor on that one. Now, I had real fun opening up this flower. It was a tubular flower because of the fused corolla, so I cut it and unrolled it. And what I saw was that the male parts were fused onto the corolla, which was really cool. And the corolla would separate from the calyx readily. So I got that looking at the comfrey, and then on the borage, I tried to do this big sort of top-down view because the borage had a really interesting structure, and you can see I'm kind of geeking out on the unusual structure on the top of the borage flower. And I had more questions about this one, and nature journaling, it's really important in nature journaling to write down your questions and to practice that line of inquiry. So I wrote down a bunch of my questions, got in some of my lettering, and then once again I'm coming back and trying to do the majority of my watercolor all at the end. If you learned something during this video, hit the thumbs up button down below. And if you can't wait all the way until next week for the next episode of the show, check out these 2 videos here. Bye.